You are going to be shocked and amazed at the story I'm going to tell you today.
A woman started screaming, "There's another plane coming, there's another plane coming." The first thing I felt was the air sucked out of my lungs, like a change in pressure. Then I was flying. I was flying through the air from the impact. I was just flying. I remember very well the pain of hitting the wall, the marble wall, and then I remember the warmth from the explosion, and then I passed out. My back was on fire, and my arm, and I was smelling my own skin burning. I remember Wells Crowder, the man with the red bandana. He had some type of cloth, and I felt him use that to put the flames out. And he hugged me, and he said, "Just stay awake, help is coming."
This is a horrific and dramatic story told by Tanya Head, a woman who eventually became the president of the World Trade Center Survivors Network organization. So, what do the victims of the 9/11 World Trade Center disaster and the victims of Jessa Dillow Crisp have in common? You've probably already figured out that Tanya Head was a woman who lied about being a victim of the World Trade Center attacks on 9/11 and took her lies to an unimaginable degree before being caught. Her success of widespread deception, fueled on by a media that didn't do their job, was quite amazing. She devised a hoax that is so similar to Jessa Dillow Crisp that I had to do a video to show you the mind-blowing and amazing similarities in their stories. The clip I just showed was from a documentary about Tania Head called The Woman Who Wasn't There, and there's also a book by the same title. I'll put a link in the description below so you can watch that whole documentary after watching this video. I'm going to show you how Jessa Dillow Crisp and Tanya Head used the same tactics and some of the same motivations to fool so many people for years. And not just the public, but the insiders in their respective worlds. So the world of people Tanya Head infiltrated with her lies was the World Trade Center victims groups. That was her target. The world Jessa Dillow Crisp infiltrated was the anti-sex trafficking advocacy groups and sympathetic Christians. To start off with, both women came from other countries and relocated to the United States where no one knew their real backgrounds. Tanya came to the United States from Spain. Jessa came to the United States from Canada. By relocating to a different country, they were both able to establish new identities with false backgrounds and fabricate a victim story without anyone recognizing that their stories did not match with reality. With Jessa, she started her years of public deception by using her married name, which I just found out actually, or realized she actually started using before she was actually married, which naturally allowed her to hide her real background. I have not revealed her maiden name in this series because I don't want her family, who are her victims, to be further traumatized by her. But anyone who wants to dig into her background could find it. No one in the general public was aware of her maiden name, and this is how Jessa got by with her deceptions. In Miss Head's case, she changed her first name from Alicia to Tanya. In both cases, the events that allegedly caused them to be victims could not easily be verified with anyone who was in the world they were targeting due to their backgrounds being hidden. Moving to a different country gave them an opportunity to do this. In Jessa's case, moving to Denver. In Tanya's case, moving to New York.
Para ella personalmente, ella vio en eso una posibilidad para destacar, para incluso ser admirada, comprendida, no sé, se le abrió un mundo en ese aspecto. Y Nueva York, claro, es una ciudad de sueño y para ella ese sueño lo lo consiguió a raíz de los hits.
Tanya claimed she was in the towers when the planes hit on 9/11 and was in the hospital recovering from a very serious wound to her arm for the following 2.5 months. Turns out there was an injury to her arm, but it was due to an accident years before that had nothing to do with 9/11.
I was in the hospital until Thanksgiving, November 2001. My back was really burned, my arm was burned, I couldn't walk, so I was in a wheelchair. I couldn't even pull myself on the wheelchair because I only had one good arm. So, you know, between the wheelchair, the trauma, the loss, I didn't know where to start. It was just too hard. It was like looking at a mountain that was 20,000 feet tall.
In reality, Tanya was in Barcelona, Spain during the attacks. She was taking classes for her master's degree. The date of 9/11 was a holiday in Spain, so there were no classes that day. Witnesses say she was back in class the next week with no mention of being in the towers and no difference in her arm than had been before. She graduated in Barcelona the following spring.
Alicia Esteve Head.
You know, when I think about what Tanya was doing on 9/11, 2001, she probably was just having a regular day in Barcelona, you know, getting up like everyone else. You know, someone made some form of an announcement that there's a terrorist attack going on in Manhattan.
In Jessa's story, she claimed she was sex trafficked by her parents and put in dark rooms, never allowed to play outside or see the landscape of her hometown, and never educated, which you can see on the other videos on this channel. I won't replay all that here again. In reality, she grew up in a Christian home and was enrolled in a homeschool program with 2 well-educated parents and 10 siblings who were also all well-educated and taught stringed instruments. She nor any of her siblings were ever sex trafficked by her parents. In both Jessa and Tanya's cases, as I said, the women were able to make these claims because no one in their life at the time knew of their real backgrounds. So they began to build their new lives and identities upon the foundation of false stories, and everyone around them was caught up in it with them. Another similarity is that both women were very, very good liars. So they were able to make their stories the most extreme and horrific of anyone else's, causing their audiences to be completely amazed at their resilience and bravery, having overcome such horrible situations. In video 8 in the Jessa Crisp series, I explain Jessa's extreme stories and how they were designed to be the most extreme of anyone else's, including real victims of actual abuse. Tanya did this to real victims too. She made her story the most extreme and topped any other stories that real victims actually suffered. Listen to some of the real victims of the 9/11 attacks describe Tanya's story.
When I first heard Tanya's story, she did not talk about it much. And then one day she just wrote it out in its entirety. And it blew me away. I mean, you know, we had all been through horrible things, but Tanya's was just head and shoulders above anything else that any of us had gone through.
She was fabulous. Here's this person who went through so much that who in the world could possibly survive this? Yet she's a survivor. Here she is, she's a survivor.
I think Tanya's presence made the docent program that we had envisioned possible. Her story kind of fit into that kind of all-encompassing a survivor and a hero and, you know, a widow and everything that kind of 9/11 came to represent on that day. So her story was incredible.
I would be behind her and she would start circling around and the tape would play, oh my God, the plane is coming, the plane is coming. And it would literally crash. And I can tell you, I could visualize this stuff listening to her talk about it. She would recount how her assistant was decapitated, how everyone around her was burnt. She told me that her arm was completely severed, that there was just one little piece of skin right here where it was hanging off, and some man started tugging on her arm, and she was screaming and crying because she was afraid that this man was going to pull her arm off. And she told me that she took her arm and she tucked it into her coat to keep it from falling off her body. And she'd start crying harder and harder, and she'd be a wreck, and I would be trying to hold her up. Like, I didn't know what to do. I didn't know what to do. Right now, even talking about this, I get so worked up that I started going into so much anxiety over this, but I did this for her because she was going to get better.
When I first encountered Tanya Head on the internet group, we began having an email conversation, and she shared her story with me, and I shared my story with her, which is kind of normal for survivors to do. I was struck by how dramatic her story was.
It was pervasive. It was this idea of this person who had gone through so much, and people try to protect her a lot, and I think I probably had a protective feeling right from the start.
As I laid out in part 5 in the Jessa Dillow Crisp series, How Has She Deceived So Many for So Long? In both Tanya and Jessa's cases, the stories they were telling were very highly emotionally charged. People who listened to them felt guilty and uncomfortable if they even questioned in their mind the legitimacy of their tales. The actual survivors and audience members would immediately reprimand themselves for even thinking that something could be amiss.
It would have been actually cruel for any one of us to question her on anything. It would have been downright cruel.
I became aware of Tanya, and I was very curious as to how she got through all that. It was a story that pulled you in, obviously. But I did notice that her arm looked like it had been, I don't know, it almost looked like skin grafts on her right arm. And I remember thinking that it didn't look like it had been burned.
I had felt mad at myself for even thinking that there was something amiss. But I often wonder why I was even asking the question.
The thought crossed my mind, what if she's one of these people who just never tells the truth and she just made everything up? You know, the thought crossed my mind, but I didn't think it was possible.
This atmosphere of legitimate victimhood surrounding the 9/11 attacks, the emotionally charged nature of Tanya's tales, and the feeling of guilt for even questioning someone's story made it much easier for imposters to come forward and gain attention by making false claims. This is the same in the case of Jessa Dillow Crisp. Her tales are highly emotionally charged, and the audience feels guilty if they even question her story. Not only do they feel guilty, but they feel they have to protect her and reprimand anyone else who questions her. For example, in Jessa's case, I have been reprimanded over and over again by people who believe I am the villain here because I questioned her story. And I found recently, as I revealed in part 11 in this series, that I wasn't the only one who decided to check out her background. And the other man who did this found the same thing I did. And he, like me, found people unwilling to look at the evidence he found about Jessa's background. In Tanya's case, one of the real survivors did the same thing. Because he was having so many doubts, he decided to just check out her story for himself. He discovered that she was an imposter and a fraud, but he was too afraid of losing friends because she was seen as practically a god at the time within the religious fervor of the 9/11 victims groups.
Well, I think a lot of people use 9/11 to heal themselves. I mean, I think 9/11 became oddly a religion for some people. You know, it was a way to belong. It was a way to be part of something bigger than themselves.
I'm like, oh my God, I can't believe I'm seeing this. And it's like, well, wait a minute. I keep trying to find one more website that will confirm her story, and I'm checking and checking and checking. Nothing. Needless to say, I didn't get any sleep that night. But I sat on this information. These people were so important in my life. They brought me back. You know, they made me into a human being again. I don't know what would have happened if I never met them. And I did not want to lose that. You know, I just could see her making all these people go away. And I couldn't do it. I knew deep down that I was going to tell eventually. You know, I just knew, but I didn't want to do it. I mean, I was just too scared because I knew the power that she had over people.
Another really interesting parallel is how both Jessa and Tanya made up imaginary relationships in order to bolster their victimhood status. In Jessa's case, she wrote a letter to an imaginary sexual predator and detailed abuse that never happened to her in order to solidify the emotion in her audience, along with another goal that I revealed in part 6 in this video series, where the entire letter that she wrote is exposed. In Tanya's case, she made up an entire romantic relationship with a man whom she'd never met, but who was a man that was actually killed in the towers on 9/11. She made up all the details to go with it. When you listen to her story here, notice how extreme this romantic story is and how she gives so many amazing details. She even said she got a judge to posthumously marry her to this man so she could claim to be a 9/11 widow, which actually isn't a thing. You can't posthumously marry someone.
I came home from work, and what I found was rose petals leading from the door to our dining room, and I followed the rose petals and I found Dave standing there with a coconut bra and a grass skirt dancing to Hawaiian songs, and I was like, oh my God. And he had even cooked these really disgusting Hawaiian food recipes that he had found on the internet, and on the dining table were two tickets to Hawaii, leaving the next day.
He planned this whole amazing trip because she was busy working, and he wanted to take her away and had her measurements sent and made her this beautiful white dress, and her parents came from California over there to witness the ceremony. It wasn't a legal ceremony, it was like just a ceremony of a wedding.
I walked outside and there were these 4 huge Hawaiian warriors with torches waiting for me outside, and I'm like, what's going on? And they're like, no, we're just escorting you down the garden. And I'm like, okay. So I followed them and we went all the way to the beach, and there was Dave standing in the middle of a circle of orchids. And the next morning we started calling all our friends and families, telling them we had gotten married. Not married, but married. Just before 8:30, I got a phone call, and it was Dave. And he said that he just wanted to go get some coffee, and he asked me if I wanted to meet him. And I said that I was just about to go into a meeting, and I couldn't do it. And I said, I love you, and talk to you later. And that was the last time I ever spoke to him. I started seeing these flames, and I was like, something's happening in the other towers. And I started thinking about Dave right away. The first thing I did was starting to count floors down from the top. He was on the 100th floor, and I was like, oh my God, his floor is one of the floors that has been hit. Now that Dave is gone, because we were going to have that wedding on October 12th, we never really filed the marriage certificate here in New York, so in the eyes of the laws, we weren't married. There was no need for us to file it because we were going to get married here October 12th. So when he died, that was a huge problem for me, but I was able to solve that with the help of a lawyer, and a judge ended up marrying us posthumously, which was the saddest thing in the world, to become a widow, you know, like that, but it's strange.
In Jessa's case, she was, and still is to this day, hailed as a hero and courageous survivor in the anti-sex trafficking community, and the media, academia, government agencies, and Christian organizations right now still have her on their websites and social media venues as a brave survivor of horrific child abuse and sex trafficking by her parents. Jessa even still has this story on her own website right now. If you look up Jessa Crisp online, you will find a long list of articles and videos touting her heroic and amazing story as true to life. Even a quick search I did the other day shows how mainstream articles and advocacy groups treat her as a credible voice in anti-trafficking work. This happened in Tanya's case too. The media and nonprofit organizations hailed her as a hero. She was interviewed as a brave survivor of 9/11 and put basically on a pedestal in the World Trade Center survivors groups because they all believed her story. In fact, she actually became the president of the survivors organization by ousting a real survivor, the man who actually created the organization, so she could be the most important person in the group. The most influential and powerful people in New York at the time congratulated her on her courage and resilience, and even gave her exclusive access to restricted areas right in Ground Zero. The media was all over her story, and it was featured in many of their publications. And yet, it was all a lie, and none of them actually checked out her background.
I would call her just an energetic booster for the needs of the survivor community. She genuinely wanted recognition for the survivor network and the survivor community to recognize not only what they had gone through and attest to that, but to provide a venue for them to feel like this is theirs.
And from there, I started going down on my own, singing Sting, because I love Sting.
We didn't have access to the site, so that initial ability to actually go into the site was a very powerful experience, and it was very much appreciated that Tanya was able to make those arrangements.
It was amazing that she survived, so you were just thankful, to look at her and see people recover and heal and do amazing stuff with their life.
She had a tremendous sense of humor and laughed a lot and always wanted to plan another event and do important things. And one couldn't help but be drawn into that.
Well, you did a great job.
Thank you.
Then one day, finally, after 6 years of lies, a reporter at the New York Times started investigating and asking questions. If they had only done that a few years earlier before they published any of her lies, they could have been on top of things. But just like in Jessa's story, the media commonly drops the ball and doesn't do their job of verifying a story before they publish it.
We end tonight with a story that began on 9/11, a story of tragedy and heroism, survival and love. There's just one problem. As Jeff Glore reports, this story, repeated many times in the past 6 years, may be a complete fabrication.
Shocked and stunned.
New York Times discovered a flood of discrepancies.
A Manhattan woman was under fire tonight.
Now to a mysterious story about a woman and a possible stunning deception.
No World Trade Center job, no fiance, no dramatic escape.
Merrill Lynch, the financial management company where she claimed to work, had no record of her employment.
I was shocked, I couldn't believe it. What happened here? Why did she do this? And why did none of us question her?
There is no evidence she made money off her story, but she certainly gained fame.
Can we talk to you for a minute, please?
Head has now been removed as president of a 2,000-member organization of Trade Center survivors.
The person that we saw, that we believed in, never existed.
This was totally shocking, because of all the things I would ever think about somebody, that's just not something I would think about.
You're looking at everyone with suspicion. If Tanya could lie, anybody could lie.
Exactly. 2 specific quotes from that last clip stand out to me. The reporter who said, "Why did none of us question her?" That's coming from a reporter. Shout out to any reporters listening to this video. And the other part that stands out to me was, if Tanya could lie, anybody could lie. Exactly. This is why I say to those who refuse to consider that Jessa Dillow Crisp has been lying, I say, look into her background. Don't take the media's word for it. Obviously, they commonly drop the ball. Don't just read online articles or listen to her interviews. Look at the evidence and research her background. But just like Jessa's story, asking questions about Tanya initially came with backlash from people who had invested themselves and their emotions in her story. They did not want to believe they had been duped. They even got angry at those who tried to find out the truth of it. but some of them also begged Tanya to show some evidence to corroborate her story so that they could better defend her to those who were investigating. I've been accused over and over again of harassing victims when I contact them even once to ask them about the things I've discovered. Again, the person who asks the questions is the villain, not the person who is lying and refuses to provide any evidence for their claims. That person is being harassed. Notice in these next clips how at first the reporters asking questions were considered the villains by Tanya's supporters. The friends of Tanya didn't want to believe she was a fraud and actually were angry at the idea that someone would even question her story or think such a thing. And also pay attention in this next clip to the conversation the blonde woman named Linda has with the person telling her the truth, where she says, "She's not a fraud, she's a person who's hurting." Those words were nearly exactly the same words Linda Dillow said to me when I tried to explain the truth to her about Jessa.
We got a call from a reporter, David Dunlap, at the New York Times. And he said, "Hi," he said, "I'm writing this story about Tania Head, and there's a couple of things we can't quite put into place here." My immediate reaction to his call was, "Why are you harassing this woman? She's been through so much."
As the New York Times was harassing Tanya with phone call after phone call, she was sitting outside with Janice, crying hysterically, saying, they're asking all these questions, they're fact-checking, they're questioning my story. And I remember thinking to myself, what horrible people they are.
I'm thinking, this guy's onto her, because there's no reason why she should be so uncomfortable about this.
Here's Linda. Supposedly, this is the 6th anniversary. Linda should be in her own stuff, and she's worried about Tanya crying.
I begged her to give me something, a piece of evidence that I could go to the New York Times. I begged her, give me the name of the firefighter that carried you out that morning, the one that you were handed off to and threw you underneath that fire truck when the tower came down right on West Street. You told me that story a million times. You and that firefighter survived. Everybody else in Tanya's story had died. I begged her for the name of that firefighter, and she wouldn't give it to me. She would not give me the name of that firefighter. She wouldn't. Janice called me and asked me if I was sitting down, and I said, yeah, I'm sitting down. I was having my cup of coffee. It was the morning, and she started telling me that Tanya is not who she said she was.
And she was like, "Oh no, come on." And I said, "Well, this is what I heard in the attorney's office," and the both of us started looking things up.
She's not a fraud. She's a person that's hurting. And she said, "No, Linda," she goes, "her name is not what she's been telling us. There was no husband, Dave. She didn't even have a relationship with Dave. We don't even think she was in the towers that day."
When I got the phone call, I was at work. And Linda kept saying, "It's not what you think, it's not what you think, it's not what you think." And finally she blurted out the words, and I wanted to hang up the phone. I wanted to yell at Linda and say, "How could you say that? How could you say that she's a fraud?"
Tanya, to give her a compliment, she's the best liar I've ever met. I mean, she was so good at staying on her story that I really didn't notice any inconsistencies until I knew her for a couple of years.
Yes, Tanya was a very convincing liar, and this is why skilled deceivers can scam good-hearted people, especially those who are involved in an emotionally charged cause.
I think you find that by talking to other people and helping others getting involved, it helps carry your own burden. And I think that's how you mask it. You kind of hide your pain by getting involved helping others.
But there are two basic differences in Tanya and Jessa's story. In Tanya's case, it seems like there was no evidence that she gained financially from her lies and fraud. Turns out Tanya was from a very wealthy family. Obviously, she did not apply for victim benefits or charge fees for speaking engagements and etc. Regarding Jessa Dillow Crisp, this is not the case. The other difference between Tanya and Jessa is, as far as I know, Tanya slandered one person. The man she basically ousted from his position in the Survivors Network organization seems to be the only person she actually slandered. She lied. Oh yeah, she lied, and the pain she caused was real and deep to those survivors she hurt. You can see the entire documentary and hear their pain as they describe it. But as far as I know, in Tanya's case, the slander was pretty much contained to one person. On the other hand, Jessa Dillow Crisp has taken the absolute worst thing you can possibly imagine that a parent could be accused of and slandered her own parents with that kind of lie. Plus, she has slandered numerous other people and deeply hurt them. So, as horrific and awful as Tanya or Alicia's behavior was by claiming the victimhood of real 9/11 survivors, in my view, Jessa's case is much worse. She has taken the pain and victimhood of real child sex trafficking victims and victims of child pornography and claimed that victimhood for herself. That is a horrible and disgusting thing to do. Jessa needs to tell the truth and repent of this behavior. Again, my hope is that she will repent. But of course, how she handles being discovered as a fraud is up to her. She could actually remedy some of the wrongs she has created if she wanted to do so and be a huge help to others. But if she is like Tanya, she will never apologize or publicly admit her wrongdoing. And if she is like someone else I just found out about, after I wrote this whole script and put together all the clips for it, someone pointed out a new piece of information to me. There's another woman who, like Jessa, falsely claimed she was sex trafficked by her parents. But this time, instead of coming from Canada, she was from Germany. And she came to the US too, just like Jessa, establishing her false story as the foundation of her life here. She grew a large social media following before she was discovered. And this was fairly recent. I know I keep saying this is the end of the series, but every time I do that, another piece of information or relevant story like this one comes along. And right now, I have an update about Jessa, and I sincerely hope it is an indication that progress is being made in ending her career of deception, and I hope starting her on a new path. But it is definitely not over yet. At least as I am recording this video, it's not over, because as you can see, if you visit her website, jessacrisp.com, she still has her false claims right in the first 2 sentences of her bio. Next time, I will give you an update on some new information I was given about Jessa and her current situation. So be sure to subscribe so you can hear that update, as well as a video where I talk about the woman from Germany, Coco Berthmann, and how her story compares to the Jessa Dillow Crisp story. If you think exposing this kind of slander and deception needs to get out in the public so that deceivers will be caught and stop slandering and defrauding others, please be sure to share this video and this series. I'd love to hear from you, so also comment below and don't forget to subscribe. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you here next time.